So we're kind of shifting. We talked a little bit about this last week. The chapters we've done so far focused on Isaiah's prophecies, the collections of prophecies focused on Judah. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
And so now they're shifting that they're focusing on Babylon and the other intruders. All right. And the other people that were intruded as well. So we get to Philistia and Moab. All right. Because they're adjoining countries. And all right. So I'll refer to the map when we get to that part. Okay. All right. So our psalm today is one that those of us that grew up in the 70s are probably pretty familiar with in terms of Arlo Guthrie singing. Any hints? Nobody got it?
A time for.
No, y'all did this camp that I did.
Well, when you mention it, I might know it.
Yeah, it's not Alice's Restaurant. I know
No,
that.
it's on the same album. It's Psalm 137. Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept at the memory of Zion. On the poplars there, we hung up our harps. For there our jailers had asked us to sing them a song, our captors to make merry. Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How could we sing the song of Yahweh on alien soil? If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand wither. May my tongue remain stuck to my palate if I do not keep you in mind, if I do not count Jerusalem the greatest of my joys. Remember, Yahweh, to the Edomites' cost, the day of Jerusalem, how they said, down with it, raise it to the ground, meaning the temple. Daughter of Babel, doomed to destruction, a blessing on anyone who treats you as you treated us, a blessing on anyone who seizes your babies and shatters them against a rock. Ooh. Yeah, that's a little harsh.
So
RSV
he sang
version.
about that, huh?
Yeah,
I'm not remembering that.
By the waters of Babylon, we sat down and wept for these eyes. We remember these Zion.
I got nothing.
Okay.
Me neither.
All right, so if you have the Alice's Restaurant album, it's on side 2.
You may have gotten a pre-produced record.
Well, that was not the best version of it. So it's a beautiful, yeah, the RSV, but anyhow, it's sung in around. It's sung in around. And so, all right, so at my church camp, we played it. There was an intercom system we discovered, and so anyhow, we played Alice's Restaurant too. But
We play that every Thanksgiving Day. We get up in the morning, do that, and then watch the
Macy's Day Parade.
the
The dog show. Oh, well, then I have no idea.
I have no idea.
the WKRP in Cincinnati when he
Oh,
drove the turkey. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. Those are our 2 Thanksgiving traditions.
I love it. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that scene always makes me laugh.
I don't think I ever saw that. So.
Oh, but
I guess you can
Okay.
go on
Oh, you
YouTube
have to.
and watch
Okay.
their WKRP Thanksgiving show.
Okay.
You have to watch the whole show. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then next year when the clip comes around on Facebook,
It will make sense. to
You'll
us.
understand.
you'll understand. You have to watch the whole show. You are familiar with WKRP.
I am, but I
Okay.
didn't watch it a lot.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
I've seen a few.
But if you're
Well, that
familiar
one's
with
worth
the
the watch.
characters,
That's really fun.
yeah, if you're you got to have some familiarity with the characters.
Yeah.
To know how what they're like. But anyway, so
But we digress.
we digress. By the waters of Babylon, we sat and wept. So Psalm 137. And if you can find a recording of that song is around, it really is very pretty, an a cappella round. It is very pretty. Okay, so we are at Isaiah 13. No, yeah, 13:1. All right. So my Bible titles this section, The Proclamation About Foreign Nations. The series of prophecies that we're going to be going through are focused more on these other countries. All right. And so as I go through Isaiah with you guys, one of the things I have to keep reminding myself is this is a collection of
Right.
prophecies, and they're not necessarily in chronological order.
Oh, that would make it too easy.
That would make it too easy. Because we're going to be talking about Assyria and Babylon this morning, and I put these dates up here. I know the people online can't see it. So the Assyrian invasion took place in 722 BC. All right. The Babylonian invasion took place in 586 BC. And so what was happening in that whole part of the world, greater than Israel and Judah, was a series of invasions by a series of countries. So these are the two that had the greatest impact on Judah, were Assyria and Babylon. And Harold, correct me if I'm wrong about this, because first there was, where is my list? There was Assyria that came in. And then Assyria got taken over by the Babylonians. And the Babylonians came in. All right. And there's a couple of there's one Babylonian king in particular that we're all familiar with, Nebuchadnezzar. All right. We all know that name. Okay. And then after the Babylonians came the Medes and the Persians. All right.
And the Persians are the ones that let them go back.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So the Medes and the Persians, because remember, Babylon was where modern day Iraq is. All right. The Medes and the Persians were basically where modern day Iran is. All right. And then after the Medes and the Persians, then the invasion started coming around from Greece. All right. And then the Romans. All right. So it was just an ongoing series.
And didn't they, and I don't remember if it was Israel or Judah, but didn't one of those invite one of the surrounding countries in to help them fight off somebody else?
Didn't the Jews invite the Romans in?
Right,
to
that
fight
was
off-
later.
Yeah.
I'm thinking something similar happened in this time frame.
Nancy or Harold might know better, because you guys know more about ancient world history than one of y'all. I am not. This is what I read in my commentary. So I don't know,
Well,
but
lots
it
of
was anyhow,
stuff like that happened frequently.
yeah. You make alliances and things don't work out quite like you thought they were going to. All right. So chapter 13 going into the beginning of chapter 14, all right, is a proclamation about Babylon. All right. And so let me see, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk through before we read it. Our commentator here, Golden Gay, he talks about how, he uses the analogy of Syria and Babylon as being like superpowers of the time. All right. And superpowers do fall. And so as we talk about Babylon, we're going to be seeing that Babylon is a great example of, Assyria and Babylon falling. All right. So in this chapter 13, the first 11 verses were meant for Judah to hear, for the people of Judah to hear. And and there's not a whole lot of mention. The very first line of chapter 13, if you're looking at it, says proclamation about Babylon. All right. And then it's quite several verses, a number of verses before anything word Babylon is brought back in. All righty. Would somebody like to read chapter 13, verse all the way through 14:2.
Do we want to read it in the Bible or from our book?
Either one.
Okay.
All right, so let me say one thing, I think. All right. There's a term that he uses in his translation in the book, Yahweh's army. He uses that term.
Troops.
So I want to talk a little bit about that. Yahweh is the Hebrew name for God. Okay, in most English Bibles, the NRSV and stuff, it's translated as the Lord. All right. So in the NRSVs and probably NIVs, that what in my Bible says Yahweh Sabaoth, and in y'all's in the NRSV and NIV, it's translated the Lord of Hosts. All right.
And this Bible translates it the Lord of Armies.
Okay, that's what I'm getting to. That word Sabaoth, literally in Hebrew, literally means armies. So that's why in this translation, he translates it Yahweh's armies. And Sabaoth name, word, is on the back of all Israel's army trucks, vehicles now. So, because it's come to be associated with the Lord's army. Okay, so to give some clarification about that, all right?
Hey, I wanna read part of my foot here.
Beat that out my back.
Hey, Susan, do you want to mute? All right, I'm gonna mute her.
Oh, she got it.
Instead of,
Got it.
you had prophecy,
I
right?
should be muted.
Oh, she got it. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, mine says proclamation about.
proclamation, okay. This is that Jewish Bible that I keep talking about. The portent, he translates it as portent, as the literal sense of burden, which is to say a burden of prophetic pronouncement. Some render this as oracle, though oracle tends to be murkier. So it's not just a proclamation, it's a heavy, depressing, burdensome.
Like none of the other stuff hasn't been.
Just more so.
Okay, just more so, okay.
Just more so. Okay. All right, so are you reading from your Jewish Bible?
I'm reading from my Jewish Bible.
Okay, all right.
The portent about Babylon that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw in a vision. On a bald mountain, raise a banner. Lift up your voice to them. Wave a hand that they enter the gates of the princes. I have charged the ones I have summoned, even called forth my warriors from my wrath, who exult in my pride. The sound of a crowd on the mountains, the likeness of a vast people, the sound of the din of kingdoms, nations assembling. The Lord of armies is mustering an army for war. They come from a faraway land, from the end of the heavens. The Lord with his anger's weapons to destroy all the earth. Howl, for the Lord's day is near. As shattering from Shaddai it shall come. Therefore all hands shall go slack. Every human heart shall quail. They panic, and birth pangs shall seize them. Like a woman in labor, they shall shudder. They shall gaze aghast at each other, their faces in flames. Look, the Lord's day comes, ruthlessly, anger and smoldering wrath, to turn the earth into desolation and expurge its offenses from it. For the stars in the heavens and their constellations shall not shine with their light. The sun shall go dark when it rises, and the moon shall not send forth its light. And I will single out the world for its evil, against the wicked for their crime, and put an end to the pride of the arrogant, bring low the overweening of tyrants. I will make man scarcer than gold, human beings than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall quake from its base in the anger of the Lord of armies, on the day of his smoldering wrath. And they shall be like a deer driven off, like sheep that are not gathered in. Each man shall turn to his people, and each man shall flee to his land. All who are found shall be stabbed, all who are caught shall fall by the sword. Their babes shall be snatched as they look. Their homes shall be looted and their wives ravished. I am about to rouse the Medes against them, who take no account of silver and have no desire of gold. And with bows young men shall be pierced, and they shall not pity infants. Children they shall not spare. And Babylon, this splendor of kingdoms, the glorious pride of the Chaldeans, shall be as God's overthrowing of Sodom and Gomorrah. She shall remain without settlers forever, have no dwellers for time without end. And the Arab shall not pitch his tent there, nor shepherds bed their flocks there. But wildcats shall lie down there, and their home shall be filled with owls. And ostriches shall dwell there, and satyrs there shall dance. And hyenas shall shriek in her palaces, and jackals in her mansions of pleasures. It is close to come now. Her days shall not draw on. For the Lord shall have pity on Jacob, and again shall choose Israel, and set them down on their land. And the sojourner shall join them and become part of the house of Jacob. And people shall take them and bring them to their own place, and the house of Israel shall own them on the Lord's lands as male slaves and slave girls, and their captors shall become their captives, and they shall hold sway over their taskmasters. I want to know how they knew about ostriches. I thought they just lived in Australia.
Well, people traveled all around, we know there's, that word. Sojourners? No. It'll come to me, where people pack up their goods and travel to another country. No, to trade. To trade.
Traders.
Yeah, trade routes. There were trade routes all through the world.
routes, yeah.
That's
There
why
were.
Afghanistan is as diverse as it is. Remember we talked about that in CWF because of all the trade routes.
Right.
And went through Afghanistan, through
It's
the,
just Australia is a little off the beaten path.
but ostriches aren't from Australia.
Oh,
They're from Africa.
okay. Shows
Aren't
my
they?
ignorance. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think emus are from Australia.
That's what I thought.
I don't know.
Okay, I've learned something today then.
always a good day when you learn something.
Yeah.
And show your ignorance to multiple people.
Even
I'll
better.
find out for sure.
Okay.
It's
All right.
never wrong.
Mr.
Yeah.
Google's always right.
Okay, so I want to go back, look at verse 17. Look, against them I am stirring up the Medes, who care nothing for silver, who set no value by gold. Right, because when the Medes invaded Babylon, they didn't destroy them. They didn't pilfer everything. It was the end, the Babylonian superpower.
Yeah.
All right, but it wasn't the end of Babylonian, possessions and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So anyhow, so that's, the Medes didn't come in to destroy, they just ended Babylon as a
They just
superpower.
like to beat up on people.
They just wanted to have control, so they
Okay.
figured out how
Yeah.
to do that.
Right.
So that's my supposition. They figured out how to do that
That makes
without
sense.
wiping everybody out.
Ostriches are from Africa.
Okay.
I'm looking at the news.
Okay. All right, so,
Australia.
okay. All right, anything else that anyone wants to add about this?
Other than the fact that it was awful. I mean, that was ugly.
Sounds like October 7th, or pardon me, November 7th. No,
October,
Yeah,
yeah,
let's see.
right. All right, so, Golden Gate makes the note that in Isaiah's day, when Isaiah was doing all this, Babylon was really relatively unimportant. All right, because it was beyond Assyria. Syria was in
The big
control.
guy.
Right, remember Syria
Okay,
preceded Babylon.
got it.
All right. So, but they decided they wanted to challenge Assyria and get others to join in. All right. And so we'll be talking more about this later in Isaiah in chapter 39. Okay, so,
You read ahead, did
no, the commentator said that.
you?
So it was in reality, it was a century after Isaiah's prophecies that Babylon became the superpower. Okay, now whether or not, now there is some thinking too, remember, that there were lots of Isaiahs, that there wasn't one Isaiah. And it wasn't, even if there was just one Isaiah, the prophecies were not put together like this until some time later. All right.
Isn't that what a prophecy is? Foretelling something that's to come? I'm not sure I would be real impressed with him if he only told me what I already knew. The fact that he predicted something 100 years before it happened and it was all written down, I'd be like, "That Isaiah, he was pretty cool now. Oh, he saw this 100 years ago. He was a better prophet than I gave him credit for."
Yeah. All right, but look at those first two verses. I want to go back and look at those first two verses of chapter 14. That the Lord will have pity on Jacob. He will choose Israel once more and resettle them on their native soil. So it ends with the good news that God's intervention. All right. That people will take them and escort them home, and the house of Israel will have them as slaves, men and women on the Lord's soil. And they will enslave those who enslave them and will master their oppressors. So there is hope there. All right. Okay. So moving into the rest of chapter 14. Okay. This is again still in Babylon, but we're going to be getting the end of 13 gets into some verses about Assyria. And we're also going to be talking about we get to Philistia and Moab. All right. Because they were neighboring countries that also got conquered. So as we move into this, let's look at this map up here. All right. So the purple is Judah. Right?
A little more, yeah.
Oh, no, it's this one. I can't.
Let me get out of your way.
It's this map that I'm looking
Yeah.
at, all right?
okay.
It's this map, okay, because this is the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. So here's Judah, the purple, all right? I'm going to get down. All right, over here is Moab. To the west of Judah is Moab. And east. Okay, east, to the east of Judah is Moab. Yes, I'm directionally challenged. I admit it. So driving with me on unfamiliar roads is an adventure. All right, who was a famous Moabite?
Ruth's mother.
Ruth.
Yeah.
Oh, Ruth.
Ruth,
Yeah.
Ruth and her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Right, because remember?
Yeah.
Boaz that's who she married. Anyhow,
Yeah.
there was a horrible drought and they gone
Yeah.
over to Moab. All right, then to the west, to the west of Judah is right here along the coast is Philistia.
Philistines.
Yep, the Philistines. So,
Who was a famous Philistine?
Goliath.
Goliath. Okay.
I've had lots of coffee today. The brain is really working here.
Really perking today.
That's where co-teaching comes in handy. Okay, so if somebody would read chapter 14, verses 3 through 23, 3 through 23.
And I'll read out of mine, and it will be in the day when the Lord gives you rest from your pain and turmoil and harsh service in which you have been enslaved, that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased and how fury has ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of rulers, which used to strike the peoples in fury with unceasing strokes, which subdued the nation in anger and unrestrained persecution. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into shouts of joy. Even the cypress trees rejoice over you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you are laid low, no tree cutter comes up against us. Sheol from beneath is excited over you to meet you when you come. It arouses for you the spirits of the dead, all the leaders of the earth. It raises all the kings of the nations from their thrones. They will all respond and say to you, even you have been made weak as we. You have become like us. Your pomp and the music of your harps have been brought down to Sheol. Maggots are spread out as your bed beneath you, and worms are your covering. How have you fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn? You've been cut down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit. Those who see you will gaze at you. They will ponder over you, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world like a wilderness and overthrew its cities, who did not allow his prisoners to go home? All the kings of the nations lie in glory, each in his own tomb. But you have been cast out of your tomb like a rejected branch, clothed with the slain who are pierced with the sword, who go down to the stones of the pit like a trampled corpse. You will not be united with them in burial, because you have ruined your country. You have slain your people. May the offspring of evildoers not be mentioned forever. Prepare for his sons a place of slaughter because of the iniquity of their fathers. They must not arise and take possession of the earth and fill the face of the world with cities. I will rise up against them, declares the Lord of hosts, and will cut off from Babylon name and survivors, offspring and posterity, declares the Lord. I will also make it a possession for the hedgehog and swamps of water, and I will sweep it with the broom of destruction, declares the Lord of hosts.
Yahweh's army. All right, so my Bible titles this passage, the death of the king of Babylon. All right, so
I have herons instead of hedgehogs.
You do?
Yeah,
yours says what?
herons instead of hedgehogs.
They're really different, aren't they?
This is verse 23.
I was looking to see what.
I have owls.
Yeah,
All-
that's how he translated too is owls.
All the animals, I've got hedgehog and swamps of water.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, I've got, I'm
What is
looking
the
at
Good News
dwellings
Bible?
by herons.
It just says owls.
Says owls.
We
I
just
don't
says
know.
they-
It will be a swamp, no mention of herons, but
It'll be a
Any other
swamp.
one.
or
All right.
the broom of protection.
All right, so we don't know whether this prophecy could be talking about Nebuchadnezzar or there was another famous Babylonian king named Nabonidus. I hadn't heard of him, but
Yeah, how famous could he have been?
It's real.
well enough that, they noted him. But so Isaiah is talking about, and this is, my Bible made a note of, this is a satire. This is written to be a satire.
Okay.
All right. And so Isaiah is in his prophecy is talking about someone trying to usurp God's position of authority. All right. So Babylon trying to usurp God's authority. And so this is what Isaiah is prophesying going to happen to Babylon for trying to do that. All right. And this is a theme that was developed and used in other parts of the Bible, of the Old Testament. Ezekiel 28 talks about the Phoenicians in relation to a similar kind of theme. This is what's going to happen to you for trying to usurp God's authority. All right, so a couple of things I wanted to point out in this passage. If you go back to look at verse 7, all right. The whole world was at rest and calm, shouts of joy resounding, because because now you're gone. The cypresses, the cedar, or really it's verse 8, the cypresses, the cedars of Lebanon rejoice aloud at your fate. That's because both Assyria, then Babylon, plundered the forests of Lebanon for their own building purposes. Okay. So, and then coming on down to verse 12. All right. How did you come to fall from the heavens, day star, son of dawn? All right, so there's a couple of different, and then it goes on. How did you come to be thrown to the ground, conqueror of nations? You who used to think of yourself, I shall scale the heavens higher than the stars of God. I shall set my throne. I shall sit on the mount of assembly, far away to the north. I shall climb high above the clouds. I shall rival the Most High. Okay, so there were, of course, there were lots of other religious, ancient religions during that time. Judaism was the monotheistic one. But apparently in a lot of those other little religions around, the stars, there were lots of stories and myths that came out of watching the stars. Okay. Think about the Greeks later and all the story, how they named
All
the
the
constellations and all that stuff. All right. So that's what this is referring to. Golden Gate talks about it as being, it's about Venus. All right. So that's why verse 12, it says day of dawn.
As a morning star.
Son of dawn. Yeah. Day star, morning sun. All right. So Venus is usually most visible in the morning for much of the year. Apparently in that part of the world, I can't speak. We can see it up in the sky at night in this part of the world. All right. Anyhow, so Venus was visible during part of the year just before dawn. All right. The other part of the year, it wasn't. That the sun coming up would block out, it was so bright you couldn't see Venus. So the story that developed out of that was that it was like, some powerful king losing his power. That star coming and going was, a king comes up, gets power, then loses its power. So that it's imagery of that kind of scenario. All right. So in the Canaanites in particular, their story was that it was a failed attempt by Venus to be the top god. But there's other, see what yours says.
About Bright One, Son of Dawn. The appellation, of course, is heavily sarcastic. This is a sun that is set forever. The cosmic sweep of the language generated the idea among Christian interpreters that this figure is Lucifer, which means light bearer, in accordance with the Hebrew, that is Satan.
And Isaiah 14, literary reference here, Isaiah 14 is the verses he used to describe why Satan was cast out. He quotes from Isaiah 14,
Who
that
does?
John Milton.
Oh,
in Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
Yes,
That-
that's in one notes too.
Yeah, that
Yes.
he uses these, and if you go back and look, he uses many of these verses to actually describe Satan, who dared to think himself equal to God.
So Isaiah has been used by a number of folks in a number of ways. The different parts of Isaiah have been used in different ways by different folks. Yep. Okay. All right. So this passage also refers to Sheol. And I wanted to, in the back of the commentary is a nice little glossary. So does anybody know just real quick what Sheol means?
Hell,
Hell, right. Well, in the New Testament, the word Hades is used, and over
Yeah,
time
just
it's
kind of
evolved.
the under.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's what
Yeah,
what Sheol
not
meant at this time.
Yeah, I don't think it meant a land of punishment so much
No.
that it was just.
Some read what Golden Gate
Okay.
put in his glossary. That the most frequent of the Hebrew names for the place where we go when we die. So Sheol is the one that's just the place where we go when we die. In the New Testament, it's called Hades. It isn't a place of punishment or suffering. It's not that, but simply a resting place for everyone. a kind of non-physical analog to the tomb as the resting place for our bodies. So, but he also, the author brings in some tomb imagery as well in this passage. So, but that's what Sheol is. So, all right. Okay. So there's Golden Gate makes the point that there's no rest yet for the suffering, but Isaiah has seen the superpowers downfall. All right. So the next passage, we're just going to break it up. All right. First, we're going to finish up and talk about Assyria. So if somebody would read 24 through 27.
I'll do it.
Okay.
The Lord Almighty has sworn, surely as I have planned, so it will be, and as I have purposed, so it will stand. I will crush the Assyrian in my land, on my mountains. I will trample him down. His yoke will be taken from my people, and his burden removed from their shoulders. This is the plan determined for the whole world. This is the hand stretched out over all nations. For the Lord Almighty has proposed, and who can thwart him? His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back?
All right, so just a little bit about Assyria. All right, so then if we can move on to verses 28 through 32, and this is about the Philistines, Philistia, which is to the west of Judah. All right. Sarah, you want to read it?
Sure. In the year of the death of King Ahaz, this portent was: Rejoice not, Philistia, all of you, that the rod of him who struck you is broken. For from the stock of a snake an asp shall come out, and its fruit a fiery flying serpent. And the poor shall graze in my pastures, and the needy shall lie down in safety. And I will kill your root with famine, your remnant it shall slay. Howl, O gate, scream, O town, Philistia, all of you melts away. For from the north smoke has come, and none is alone in his ranks. And what will he answer to a nation's envoys that the Lord again has founded Zion, and his people's poor shelter there?
Okay, so this is where things are not necessarily in chronological order. Because Golden Gate talks about how this writing about Philistia, these incidents may have even predated Assyria. Okay. That it possibly predates the Assyrian invasion, and that these verses were actually written for the Judah, people in Judah, to how to consider this invasion from the Philistines. So the point to make, could look at verse 12. What reply will be given then to the messengers of that nation? That Yahweh founded Zion, and there the poor of his people will find refuge. So there's still hope. There's hope even in this conquest by Philistia, the Philistines. All right. And it sort of opens things up for Philistia and Moab to turn to Yahweh also as a point that Golden Gate makes. All right.
All right, so we'll pick up with judgment on Moab.
Yeah, because 15 and 16, lots of 16, 15 and 16 are about Moab. So I think that's a good stopping place for us. And we already talked about the Moabite we most know of, and that's Ruth, but there are other references to the Moabs in the Old Testament, in different parts of the Old Testament. So anything anybody wants to add about Babylon and Assyria? We're
No,
not done with them.
thank you for the lesson, Kathy. And what I want to know is when we're going to tie it all together and explain what this means to us. Because there's a lot of death and destruction and smiting and tables turning. So I'm anxious for the sum up to tell me what this means to us.
What lessons there are for us to learn from this?
Bingo.
We could,
I think
as
that's something for
teachers-
all of us to come.
well, I think as teachers, we could give a homework assignment and that's your homework assignment.
Absolutely.
Ooh,
Whoever's sitting
Well,
next to Sarah, reach over and slap her for me. I can't reach her.
can't do it, it would be spousal abuse.
And I'm not gonna do it, she's a fellow.
You can take her out of the classroom, but you can't take the classroom out of her.
I think it's interesting that Babylon is used again in Revelation to be the symbol of all
Yeah.
evil.
Oh, I've forgotten that.
Yeah, I just think that, we're talking about Babylon coming in and,
Yeah.
one of the footnotes in my Bible said that even to this day, although Babylon in Iran exists as a place, it's still covered with dirt and sand.